Good morning. This is the time that was noticed and posted for our regular board meeting of the Board of Supervisors. It's Tuesday, March the 26th, 2024. It's 10 o'clock a.m. We're in the Board of Supervisors hearing room on Melody Lane, Bisbee. Pursuant to ARS 38-431.02H, the public will have physical access to the meeting place 15 minutes prior to the start of the meeting. Any item on this agenda is open for discussion and possible action. And if you would stand and join me, please, in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. You may be seated. The order or deletion of any item on this agenda is subject to modification at the meeting, and the board may vote to recess into executive session for the purpose of obtaining legal advice from the board's attorney on any matter listed on the agenda pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A3. We begin with the roll call. District 1.
Crosby is here.
District 2, Supervisor English is present. District 3.
Supervisor Judd is here.
We have a complete board this morning. Members of the public may attend this meeting by Microsoft Teams computer or mobile app, or by phone by calling 602-609-7513 or 888-680-6714. Conference ID 618-829-74#. If you have trouble accessing this meeting remotely, call 520-432-9200 for direction. The board may permit public comment during the discussion of any item on this agenda. To speak on an agenda item or during the call to the public, complete and return the speaker request form to the clerk of the board by 9 o'clock a.m. on the day of the meeting. Note that some attachments may be updated after the agenda is published, and this means that some presentation materials displayed at the board meeting may differ slightly from the attached version. Call to the public. The first person is Renee Benoit in person. Start with your name and address.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Can everybody else hear me all right?
You're speaking to us.
I beg your pardon?
I said speak to us.
Okay, I will. Well, okay, so to introduce myself, I'm Renee Benoit, and I pronounce it Benoit, and I live in Hereford, Arizona. I wanted to come and talk about a recent experience that I had. I volunteered to be a poll worker at the presidential preference election, which was very, very interesting. And I had some observations about what went on during the voting during the day. I came to the conclusion after being there the whole day that the problem with the voting is not the machines. I'm really clear on this. I think the machines are phenomenal and work very, very well. So if there is some kind of idea still floating around that we need to have a, what's it called? The paper ballots. If we need to go to a hand count or anything such thing as that, that's a really big mistake. Those machines work really, really well. I manned 3 different positions during that day, and I noticed that the only possibility for any kind of fraud or any kind of weirdness that would be happening would be from the people. Number one, our training wasn't that good, and a lot of people had to kind of learn on the fly. So that was a kind of a problem. But there were a lot of people who did have training already, and they were good. And as the day went on, we found that the machines were the best thing that we had going. So I don't feel, this is my personal opinion, I don't feel that going to hand count, I think that would be a huge mistake, because if it's the people who are making mistakes, hand count is going to be exponentially worse. So that's all I had to say. And I thank you for listening,
you.
and I appreciate you considering what I have to say.
Next is Francis Alvarez in person.
Good morning. It's good to see you all again, and it's a beautiful day outside. I stand before you this morning in hope, with hope, for Miracle Valley Bible College. The last time we gathered concerning Miracle Valley Bible College, $70,000 was released for cleanup of the property. A lot of various things were mentioned that needed the attention of cleanup, including possibility of demolition of buildings. When the monies were released, there was no real specifics on what or how that could or could not be used. So I am here to say no demolition to any of the buildings. Let it go to auction. Those buildings are the tangible witness so many lives have been transformed. Most of those that desire that these buildings be not destroyed is because these are not just structures nor mere buildings to us, but rather they hold within their walls history, past, present, and future. There is more to be written from within these walls for the present and future generations to come. Keeping these buildings intact gives tangible connection to the testimonies that they carry. They take you back to a certain place and time where the unimaginable is made possible, giving hope to this present generation and the future ones to come. As they touch its walls and walk where heaven has walked, to sit in its confine and drink in the very presence and essence of something very real and tangible, stirring up hope, which is much needed in this generation today. Hope not only desires something good for the future, but rather hope expects it to happen. Hope is a reservoir of emotional strength, which we all have need of. There are many that have shown interest in this property with the buildings intact, knowing the condition that they are in. They desire to purchase this property because they understand and they know the value that this property holds, these buildings hold, past, present, and future. So I'm just here to make my voice heard. No demolition of Miracle Valley properties. Thank you.
Next is Melvin Harder in person.
Melvin Harder, and I'm from Sierra Vista. Last Thursday, it was mentioned that the county must get the college campus ready so it can be sold. It appears that our development director uses the tactic of fear of how bad the fuel tanks are, and the ground could be very well contaminated. They must be removed, he mentioned. However, it appears these 65-year-old empty tanks are not something that require immediate removal. Some years ago, the state of Arizona informed us that if they would be removed, the state of Arizona would remove those with no one else being involved. Regarding the bids that we had, the reserve, it appears your reserve was just too high, and people didn't want to pay $345 for that, $325. Someone last week brought up the septic tanks in the sewer system. Our development director stated that the sewer system has nothing to do with the purpose in question. And we want to say that it needs to be brought to the attention of any potential buyer. There are no sewers to that property. You're buying something. You cannot flush a toilet, can't put a glass of water down the sink. There are no sewer systems. There's no sewer system to that. The state does not have the ownership of the lagoon, which the lagoon is a private ownership. It's owned by the Melvin Harder Ministries, and it's separated from the sale. The development director misspoke last week when he said the lagoon is separated from the property by another landowner or rancher in the area. This is not true. There are sewer lines connecting this property, the Bible College campus, to the lagoon. These are recorded easements registered in the Cochise County Recorder's Office. The director mentioned that the health department stated they did not have any concerns with the sewer and its lagoon. Then I want to say to you, the county must inform the public there are no septic tanks with each building, and the director does not know where the septic tanks are located. Well, he should have asked. As a potential, we also have been informed that Louis Betancourt has been on the property removing materials and such as that on the property, such as the two-by-tens on the platform, and we're hoping that everything will still be there. I don't believe he should have the right to come on the property. As a potential buyer, I request to have a walkthrough just for 3 buildings: the administration building, the assisted living home, and the child care center. But we've been refused by Diane Cogsworth having permission to go on there. These 3 buildings have metal roofs and are not collapsing. I've requested this from the director since May 2023, yet I'm denied. I wish the director, I want to remind the director of his words last Thursday. He mentioned these words: "This is like a house. You want to see it before you purchase it." And in similar words of our late great president.
Your time is up, Mr. Hardy.
Okay, thank you.
The next person is Allison Morris, and I believe she's on Teams. Allison, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, I'm Allison Morse, a registered voter from Portal, and I thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak today. I would just like to express my gratitude for all those individuals who helped make our presidential primary election a success. A lot of hard work and long hours went into the effort. Election staff, volunteers, paid poll workers, and many others deserve recognition and our thanks. On election day, I drove by 2/3 of our vote centers, 12 of the 18, from San Simon over to Wilcox, down to Douglas, up through Tombstone, over to Benson, and back to Portal, stopping at each vote center along the way. After my 422-mile tour, I can say that from outside the 75-foot line, the majority of vote centers that I saw looked very well organized with appropriate staff, parking, and signage, with very few exceptions. Several weeks prior to our presidential primary election, I was out of state caring for my elderly mother and had my ballot sent to her address. Plans changed, however, and I was afraid I would be on my way back to Arizona before the ballot arrived in California. So I alerted Chief Deputy Recorder Heather Lopez. As it turned out, I received a ballot in California as well as in Arizona, but the earlier one was canceled, so of course I only voted 1 ballot. I bring this up to illustrate the efficiency and adaptability of the system. If one happens to be out of state or even out of the country, one can still vote. And if one should happen to receive 2 ballots, the checks and balances in place would prevent someone from voting twice. Finally, I'd like to recommend ballot tracks and appreciate us going online for that this year. Anyone that's concerned about tracking their ballot, this is a great feature. The system will let a voter know when their ballot was received back at the recorder's office, when their signature was verified, and when it was sent on to elections to be tabulated. The name of the program, again, is Ballot Tracks with an X, and anyone can sign up. It's super easy. Just enter trackmyballot.azsos.gov/voter/. Again, sincere thanks to everyone who made this recent election a success.
Thank you. The next speaker is Kara Harris, and I believe she's on Teams. Kara, are you there? Kara? We can't hear you, Kara.
She is online. She just needs to unmute herself. She needs to unmute herself.
Unmute yourself, Kara. We can't hear you. All right, in the interest of time, I'll put her to one side and we'll see if she decides how to unmute herself. And I'll move to the next person, which is Tricia Girodet, and she's on Teams. Tricia Girodet.
Yes, good morning. Tricia Girodet in Sierra Vista. I also had election experiences last week. I was not a paid poll worker, but I was an observer at the Huachuca City Vote Center. And it was an interesting day. I wasn't able to stay the entire time, but seeing how smoothly it went in some cases. People had their ID, usually a driver's license, that was scanned, that then printed a paper ballot. They took over to the machine, made their selection for the presidential preference, and then took that ballot over to the tabulator. When there were problems, people voted a provisional ballot if they wanted to, although I believe their provisional ballot in many cases was not going to be counted. But people wanted to do that because for some people, the database had switched them from their party to no party. And some people were pretty angry about that. Then I was one of the few allowed to view the hand count that occurred last Saturday, and which went quite well. It was easier for the hand count people to count the ballots that were cast on election day than it was for the people hand counting the mailed in large ballots, which is, for example, how I participate. But all three tables and vote count efforts successfully matched the machine counts, and everybody cheered. So, thank you.
Thank you. The next, let me check, is Kara Harris online?
Am I here? Can you hear me now?
I can't hear you, Kara.
You can't? I have my
can.
mic turned on. I have my mic turned on.
We can
I
hear
can
you.
hear you, Kara.
Oh, you can?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Kara Harris. I'm a resident of Whetstone and a taxpayer for over 23 years. I'm also a native-born Arizonan. I thank you for letting me speak today. On Friday, you'll be voting on accepting the results of the PPE, and since this is not a regular board meeting, I'm addressing this today. I am speaking to you as a longtime poll worker for Whetstone and Huachuca City. I worked the elections where we utilized poll books and paper ballots. My experience started during the Clinton administration at the Whetstone polls. Voting was a civic duty most people took to heart. I do not believe voter fraud was happening much back then, as mail-in ballots were only for our wonderful service members stationed out of the area, unable to be at the polls to vote. It was a good time when neighbors reconnected and strangers became friends if they were new neighbors. It was a good time, and we accommodated handicapped voters by taking the necessary items to their vehicles if they were impaired and could not get into the building. We had camaraderie in our community. Then came the shiny new machines with internet access, and all of a sudden, you could go anywhere in our county and vote at voting centers. These centers aided in reducing the checks and balances of knowing your neighbors. These voting centers increase the ability to commit fraud. With internet access, they are hackable. This past election proved to be unusual, to say the least. First, I know of 2 people who received mail-in ballots that were not reflected in our poll tablets. In other words, these people did not have to vote provisionally, even though they had received the ballot in the mail. They could have voted twice. I also engaged with many who suddenly were switched to NPD, Independent, or others when they had been lifelong Republicans, who changed their political parties, denying them the right to cast a regular ballot. I personally didn't know of any Democrats who were wrongly re-registered, but I know they also existed in the Democrat preference race in the previous presidential preference. What am I saying? Trust is earned, and I feel we are seeing exactly why we objected to the machines. Now we are facing a primary at the end of July, and we can trust these internet accessible systems. Can we trust our voter rolls to be accurate? I think the PPE proved the point we've been trying to make. The system is not working, and things are definitely broken in our county. These observations are given from me, a person actually working the polls for many years. I also want to add that I believe we ought to check some things on our voter rolls. And hopefully I didn't hear Mr. Kern today. You fixed his road. Thank you.
The next speaker is Sandy Truell. I believe that's in person.
Hello, Sandy Truell from Sierra Vista. You are all complicit in election interference and fraud because of your unsecure and uncertifiable machines. We want the voting precincts that we got approved that Peggy Judd changed illegally. No machines. One day, one vote with proof of American citizenship, voter ID, and picture ID. In other words, all the kinds of IDs that you need to get a passport, to get on an airplane, to get a credit card, a hunting license, fishing license, a wedding license, driver's license, and to rent a car. These invaders will never legally be able to vote in this country, no matter what this corrupt system tells you. No machines means election integrity. Using machines means election interference and fraud. Mail-in ballots are also unconstitutional, a scam, and are rife with fraud with no chain of custody. They can just stick as many ballots in there as they want. There's no, you can check. Yes, I hear the people saying, I checked my own and I was registered. You don't know how many mail-in ballots they're putting in there. Most laws are written to keep you from checking elections, not to allow you to check them. And isn't it funny? They're persecuting people who want to check the elections, but not the people who are cheating. These machines do, I'm not disputing that machines can count votes. They get up here and say that hand counting is slower and it's not accurate, blah, blah. The machines, yes, can count votes, but it's the programming, it's the software, it's the people in charge of that can manipulate it. And how can people not see that? Every lie to the American people will be revealed. The truth is coming out. You will see that we are all slaves to the tabulators as they control every aspect of our lives. The board needs to reestablish the 55 precincts, remove third-party voting technology, ban the machines. We do not consent to mass mail-in ballots with no chain of custody or voter ID. And I want to quote Proverbs 29:16, when the wicked are in authority, sin flourishes, but the godly will live to see their downfall. Thank you.
Rebecca, we can't hear you. I'll put Rebecca to one side and we'll see if she unmutes herself, and I'll go on to Paul Barble, and he's here in person.
Oh. Hello.
You'll be next, Rebecca. We didn't get you. You were on mute.
Good morning. I'm Paul R. Barble, Sierra Vista. Election integrity, the illegal invaders and drop-offs, the invasion, lithium mining, drag queens, and our porn in our children's school, the corrupt politicians, and defending the Constitution are all topics that I would like to address, but I can't. I'm limited to 3 minutes, so I'll pick one today. I don't know why you guys do the Pledge of Allegiance when you don't believe in this country, election integrity, or the Constitution. And there's only one person on this board that does. And you try to screw him over any chance you get. Tom Crosby believes in the Constitution, election integrity, and border security, like preventing the invaders from coming across in the first place. You guys seem to like playing word games, so listen up. Tom Crosby would not follow the directives that you puppets were getting from Katie Hobbs and Adrian Fontes. He would not certify the uncertifiable. So based on your wordplay, he would not canvass the uncanvassable. We all know that Donald Trump won the election. Maricopa County's Katie Hobbs, Adrian Fontes, Chris Mays, and Cochise County's Kawaska, Lisa Mara, Brian McIntyre, Peggy Judd, and Ann English are corrupt, complicit, and accomplices and accessories to election fraud and election interference, and you have been caught, found out. The hand count had nothing to do with the issue of certifying the election and is the state's own election interference crime. Misleading testimony was never corrected by the state. The clerk was responsible for violating the majority vote of November 18th, 2022. Ann English is directly responsible for that irresponsible action. There was no such word as canvass. Canvass is not certify. You don't canvass the election, you certify the election. Where did you idiots come up with this wordsmithing crap from? It was election. It was certify the election. And based on the Constitution, it could not be certified. Tom knew this, and Katie Hobbs did not like it. And that's why she contacted you, Ann English, to make Tom Crosby certify the election, or else. And the else turned out to be suing Tom for defending the Constitution. The SOS was in charge of the elections, and the Secretary has not been responsive in providing proof of lawful accreditation of voting machine laboratories, and the lack of response would seem to suggest the inability to provide the requested proof by the Secretary. The county attorney is mistaken on a lot of things, like he implies the BOS is ordering county employees to violate the law. That's not the case. He misdirects the employees not to comply with resolution number 2. The attorney is mistaken. The county attorney continues to imply illegal actions of the board. County attorney once again is mistaken. The county attorney makes one threat after another. Brian McIntyre cannot continue to do these things. I'm sure he thinks because he got away with his extreme DUI case that he can do whatever he wants. Well, he can't. And the ABA and Ethics Board will be notified of his actions. This is all about election integrity, election fraud, and election interference, and you're all complicit in trying to destroy the Constitution.
Rebecca Jones is online.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Good morning, Supervisors. I'm Rebecca Allen Jones, President and Executive Director of Miracle Valley Oasis Center. I'm filled with mixed emotions this week. I deeply appreciate the concern each of you have individually expressed to care for the needs of this community with regards to the future of the historic Miracle Valley Bible College property. So thank you. I am concerned that you've been misled and have had, as a result, chosen to give $70,000 towards, quote, cleanup and demolition of the property without any oversight or professional review of the buildings by contractors able to properly advise you as to their ability to be restored. SHPO declared it historic. Please use caution. Daniel Coxworth has repeatedly expressed his personal distaste for the historic buildings to me privately and his interest in using the funds to, quote, get rid of the eyesore. He's mentioned that he doesn't want to have to look at it while driving to work. This is not an appropriate reason to push for this. I'm deeply concerned that his personal opinion has swayed his ability to serve the wishes of the people fairly. This has resulted in Daniel asking you to grant the $70,000 to give him the ability to clean up and demolish buildings on the property. Daniel has not gotten the professional opinion of anyone able to speak to the ability for the buildings to be saved. Interested parties, including ourselves, have the professional ability to speak to the viability to save the buildings, and we have all repeatedly indicated that the buildings may be saved. Please do not risk legal action against yourselves, which we are quite willing to take, by lacking oversight of Dan's purposes for the buildings. Do not lay any demolition or let any demolition or further harm of any structures take place. Exercise caution. You know that the only serious interested parties for the buildings want them to be unharmed and not demolished. You have an immense outcry from the public regarding the property as well. Do not allow Dan Coxworth to have a blank check. Exercise caution and oversight with him. Please tell him to board up all the doors and windows so that no further vandalism can be able to further harm the buildings, as has taken place repeatedly in recent weeks. Finally, if no civilians may be on the property for health and safety, that must include the previous owner, who Dan Coxworth has told you he allows to come onto the property freely to take materials from the buildings. This is not in keeping with your order for no civilians to be on the property. It's a risk to the historic buildings and totally unfair to future buyers who have been refused entry. Listen to the people, use oversight with Dan's use of the funds, board things up, and monitor who is accessing the property. Thank you.
The next speaker is Nancy Olmsted, and I believe she's on Teams.
Good morning. My name is Nancy Olmsted. I live in Whetstone, and thank you for this opportunity, and special thanks to those coordinating teams. Thanks to everyone in the county as well, all who contributed their time to conduct our election last week. I'd especially like to acknowledge the outstanding staff and fellow volunteers at Huachuca City for their dedication of service to our community. Voting on Tuesday was easy and rewarding. I always feel like a patriot and proudly wear my I voted sticker. However, during nearly every one of these meetings, we're repeatedly told that our election is absolutely secure. While we would all like to hope, there are many of us who simply don't believe it. Sadly, we are all often labeled and shamed for having a differing opinion. I thought this was America, a country where we could agree to disagree and exercise our First Amendment right. Instead, we live in a time when we are pressured to acquiesce, even when we disagree. That's an authoritarian state, one which our founders would never have imagined. An ABC poll indicates only 20% of Americans are very confident in the election system. Here's a couple of reasons why we're not buying into the free and fair mail-in elections. 1, in-person voters are required to present their ID before they're handed a ballot. In contrast, mail-in voters receive a ballot and then their ID is quote-unquote checked. This creates an unequal verification system, yet our Constitution requires all to be equal. Unassigned voting locations require the county to have an electronic system connected to Wi-Fi network to create real-time information on who has voted. We were told, of course, trust us, it can't be hacked. Yeah, right. Well, we don't and we won't. Intimidation will not compel us to believe that our system can't be compromised. Technology has overcomplicated a simple task. Even according to Wikipedia, only 9 out of 37 countries use technology in their elections. But not Arizona, not Cochise County. Why is that? Please stop trying to convince us technology is the optimum voting method. It's not. We can do better. Thank you.
Now we move on to the consent agenda, and it's items 1 through 4.
Madam Chair, I move we approve consent agenda items 1 through 4.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and it's unanimous and approved. Now we move to the public hearings. The first one is a new liquor license. Could I have a motion, and then we'll have an explanation?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve series number 10 beer and wine new liquor license application submitted by Arthur Miller for Winchester Mercantile LLC, located at 6533 North Fort Grant Road, Wilcox, Arizona, 85643.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Lara?
Madam Chair, members of the board, this item is for a new Series 10 beer and wine liquor store license application submitted for Winchester Mercantile, located in Wilcox. The application's been reviewed and recommended for approval by the appropriate departments. Property taxes for the parcel are current. The notice and application were posted as required by state law, and no formal protests were received. The applicant has paid the $100 processing fee, and board staff is recommending approval.
Okay. I will now open the public hearing. If there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak either for or against this issue, now is the time. Hearing and seeing none, I will close the public hearing. We do have a motion on the floor. If there's no discussion from the board, hearing none, then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and it's unanimous and approved. We move on to item number 6, and I'd like to have a motion on the floor.
Madam Chair, I move we adopt Resolution 24-04 to amend the Cochise County Comprehensive Plan land use and growth area designations of 25.8 acres in Whetstone, tax parcels 10618-009C and 106-18-009D from the developing designation to rural residential, and from category B community growth areas to category D rural areas, and adopt zoning ordinance 24-02 to rezone tax parcels 106-18-009C and 106-18-009D from R18 residential district, one dwelling per 18,000 square feet, to RU4 rural district, one dwelling per 4 acres.
I second it.
Well, that was a mouthful.
Wow, that's long. Lots of numbers.
Okay, so we have information. Matthew, are you going to explain more to us? Matthew's planner 2 from Development Services.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Supervisors. This is the staff presentation for docket CPA 2304 and RZ 2323. The applicant is Charles Blevins. The location is Camino de Mesa and Sheila Street in Whetstone. Will not repeat all the APN information. The plan amendment request is to change the land use designation from developing to rural residential and the growth area category from category B to category D, and there is a concurrent rezoning application to rezone these parcels from R18 to RU4. Existing uses of the property, those properties are undeveloped at this time. Proposed uses are single-family residences. Property location again is in Whetstone at the approximate northeast corner of Highway 90 and Highway 82. Some images from the location demonstrating that staff did post the property. Camino de Mesa is a county-maintained road. It is unimproved. An aerial shot, a drone shot, excuse me, of the two parcels and some of their surrounding residential development. And another showing some of their surrounding residential development. Those houses at the bottom of the screen would be located to the north. The applicant provided this graphic showing the intent to subdivide the 25.8 acres into 5 new parcels. The applicant has subsequently acquired the property and is now the property owner. Additionally, the applicant has also going through a minor land division application process with the county. That document has been recorded, but is yet to be updated in the parcel files. The applicant mailed notices on 19 January. Staff mailed notices, posted the property, and published a legal ad between 20 and 21 February. Staff did send out 74 notices to property owners within 1,000 feet, receiving responses 3 in opposition and 2 in favor, and public input was included in the board's packet. Very quickly, the property's location again, approximately 3/4 of a mile east of Highway 90. In an area that's predominantly residential. The current plan designation is developing, which begins approximately half a mile from Highway 92 and extends past Sheila Street for the distance of about 3/4 of a mile. This is a broader view showing the larger area down to Huachuca City, showing that is predominantly developing. There is some neighborhood conservation as well as rural residential. The red designated enterprise, which would typically be non-residential uses. Growth area is very similar to the land use designation. Again, the entirety is growth area B, and again, showing that it extends all the way down to the Huachuca City area. So very quickly, some summaries on the existing designations and growth areas. Developing is typically non-rural growth. We would expect to see that in transitioning areas. Predominantly would be mixed use. Allows residential uses typically on 2 acres or less. And developing specifically in the comprehensive plan identifies this category as should be undergoing periodic reevaluation since it is a transitionary designation. Rural residential is what it sounds like. Rural character allows residential zoning districts predominantly 2-acre lots or larger. And any non-residential uses within this classification would typically be specifically for the residents, and they wouldn't be a regional type of a commercial or non-residential use. Growth area B, similarly to developing, is again looking at that rural to urban transition. Residential lots of 1 acre or less. There is a distinct community identity oftentimes, which I think Whetstone certainly would fit that. There would be adequate infrastructure and improved streets, but again, in category D, we would be looking at low growth rates, a rural residential character, unimproved roads with limited services. And actually some of the feedback we did receive to the application identified it as kind of a rural living atmosphere in the vicinity of this parcel. Without going through in detail, There are 6 criteria within the comprehensive plan, which with staff evaluates a comprehensive plan amendment application. And in this particular case, 2 of the criteria the application comply with, 2 do not apply, and 2 do not comply. The 2 that do not comply would be the harmonious transition, and there was no significant support from adjacent property owners. But the ones that do comply is we certainly have a distinguishable development pattern beginning at about a half a mile to the east of Highway 90, which is residential. And we also have a pattern of growth no longer reflects what was originally intended or expected when that developing designation was placed there. Again, at about the quarter mile to a half a mile mark east of 90, we do have a very distinguishable residential growth pattern. So with that, Madam Chair, pursuant to docket CPA 2304, factors in favor, the growth pattern does not reflect developing land use designation. It does along the frontage of the highways, as we would expect, but the further from the highway you get, it definitely has more of a residential character. The developing designation should be changed if distinguishable development pattern has emerged. And again, at about the half a mile mark from Highway 90, we certainly see a very distinguishable residential development pattern. Factors against, no substantial support from nearby property owners. And lastly, the amendments to the requested rural residential growth area D do disrupt the land use designation patterns and do not create a harmonious transition. So I would like to make the distinction that even though the comprehensive plan designations may appear to be disrupted, the use that would be permissible by those designations pursuant to a zoning change are consistent with the existing development on the ground. Moving on to the rezoning, the request complies with 9 of the factors. 5 are not applicable. 1 does not comply, that being the consistent with planning policies, considering that we're considering a comprehensive plan amendment. Pursuant to docket RZ 2323, factors in favor of approval, complies with 9 rezoning factors, and the proposed downzone reduces the allowable residential density of the 2 parcels. Factors against, opposition has been received from nearby property owners. And secondly, the proposed RU4 zoning does allow some non-residential or more intense uses that may not be appropriate in the area. Since the applicant has gone through the minor land division application and has stated pretty much from the beginning the intent is to develop this for rural use and residential use and not for non-residential use, staff has not recommended any conditions for this downzone. Madam Chair, that completes staff's presentation of docket CPA 2304 and 2323. We are available for any questions and the applicant is present.
Question. Yes, indeed. First of all, I apologize. I did not write down your name. Would you tell it to me again?
Yes, sir. Madam Chair, Supervisor Crosby, Matthew Taylor, Planner 2.
Mr. Taylor. In favor of what we started to call down zoning, just like what we're looking at here. I like the idea of big lots and elbow room for everybody. I did have a question about what we've seen out in those areas before. If somebody wants to come in with some kind of small business, small industry or something like that, like auto mechanic, kennels, horse stables, dog groomers, hair cosmetics, any number of things that the person moves in there, they're going to think, oh, this isn't going to bother anybody if they work on other ladies' hair or something like that. But is this going to be absolutely prohibited? No business, no light industry such as that? Or can you elaborate on that for me, please?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Crosby. So staff will be looking at Whetstone and some other areas within the county, certainly with that developing land use classification to see if it still fits right, to see if these areas are still in transition or if they have had a distinguishable development pattern. So in this particular case, a rezone to R4, as you state, would allow some non-residential uses. The majority of parcels in the area are zoned residential district, R36 or R18, well, not R18, but R36. Now, R36 doesn't permit some non-residential uses with the approval of a special use authorization by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So we're not proposing to change the base zoning district. This would not be an area-wide rezone. But it would be an attempt to look at possibly a neighborhood conservation designation or a rural residential designation, which is what the applicant is requesting, for the purposes of trying to restrict those non-residential zoning districts like neighborhood business or general business, light industrial or heavy industrial, to prevent those zone changes, but still allow some of the non-residential uses that the base zoning district allows, which in this case would be R36. And there are several RU4 parcels as well. And there's a very long list. I believe there are 50 uses that would be permissible in RU4 with the approval of a special use.
Okay. So the person that is in charge, the applicant, is going to be selling these properties, whatever sizes they are, to people knowing the stipulations having to do with these businesses or the regulations that I've mentioned and the regulations that you've mentioned. So we're not going to hear about it, you know, in a couple of years when somebody can't stand their horse stables next door or something like that.
Yes, sir. Supervisor Crosby, we've had extensive conversations with the applicant. The applicant, my understanding, intends to develop single family residences on each of the new parcels. They would be generally family members, but without speaking on the applicant's behalf, they can probably address that question a little more detailed than I can.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Do you have any questions, Ms. Dillon?
I don't. I generally favored downzoning, and I'm very familiar with that community and area, and I feel like that's a good idea. So glad that it's going to benefit someone and bring permanent residents in. So
I don't know if I overlooked it, but it seems as though the neighbors are not in favor. Why?
Madam Chair and Supervisors, I did include the public input within your agenda packet. There were a couple of concerns that were voiced. One of the concerns, probably the most notable concern, one was water conservation. This is in the Whetstone Water District boundary, so water conservation should not necessarily be an overarching concern or a source for opposition. Considering that the existing zoning would allow, pursuant to an approved plat by the Board of Supervisors, upwards of possibly a 40 lot subdivision. So the zoning would allow 40 lots. The applicant is proposing 5. Some of the other concerns were concerns about the county's owner-builder opt-out program and what type of residential home product that would create and how that could potentially impact the neighborhood or their home values. That's a little bit further than what we would typically consider as far as whether or not this use would be appropriate. Residential use would certainly be appropriate for these parcels. That was one of the other concerns. One of the other concerns wasn't specifically about this parcel, but it was about there are some parcels within the area that are not necessarily in the best condition in terms of property maintenance. Some of the homes are considerably older and maybe not in the best condition either. Again, that doesn't really deal with the applicant's parcels or what he's proposing to do when developing these residential uses. And then there were a couple of others that were in support, just generally in support. Property rights motives, basically stating it's the applicant's property, and if he wants to subdivide those parcels into 5 lots and build single-family residences, then he should be allowed to do so.
Okay, if there are no more questions from the board, now open it the public hearing portion. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to address this issue? Yes, would you come to the microphone, please? Give your name and address.
My name is Charles Blevins. I live in Beverly Hills, Florida now, but will be eventually in Whetstone. One thing about this property that when we found it, we really liked the property, but it was apparently at one time it was zoned from R36 to R18 because they were planning on putting like 50, 40, whatever houses there. They had already done the hydrology report with the state. They were approved for this, but that fell apart. When I speak to the people, and I put these letters out and I answer anybody that I give them my email and direct contact for me, and I actually made the point of calling them, talking to them on the phone. They were more concerned about, having too many houses or, the back lot was the biggest because that's going to pretty much be just a field. And we've actually, there's a very good friend of mine that lives on the north side of that property that we've come to agreement because those were the neighbors that were concerned about. They have smaller lots out there, and they were concerned about somebody being right up against them. So we've kind of the number one lot. it'll stay the 8 acre and it'll be just an empty field for foreseeable future. And I think Mr. Carter, he's a captain here. He owns that little house just above, straight above the one. He's, like I said, a good friend of mine. My son and him were at base together. Him and his wife would like to buy that lot and just keep it an empty lot to buffer that area there, that neighborhood. Now, the other lots are going to be family members and a friend of mine, and we will build our own homestead there, more or less, but we're not talking, shacks or nothing like that. We just want more conservative, more energy efficient type homes, and that's all basically. There's nothing nefarious about it, nothing weird, but the main point was to not have neighbors close to us. We each have our own 4 acres or whatever, and have a big place to build. And I think personally having 4 houses or even 5 potentially is way better than having 50 for anybody. And when you explain that to people, that's where you're at. They're like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. But that's realistically, had in 1995 the plan went through, there probably today would be 50 houses sitting on those lots, or 40 some, or whatever it would be. I don't know what the rules are for how much they got to keep aside, but it was already approved on its way. And the only reason it fell apart, and that's because of the history. I've talked to the people, the owners, children. It actually was really close to happening, and somebody backed out on the road contract, and they couldn't find somebody to replace it. They were already into it that far to build the roads. So I think this is a much better option. I really do, for the community. So thank you for your time.
Any questions for the owner?
No, ma'am.
Judge?
No, thank you.
Thank you. If there's no one else, then I will close the public hearing. Give the opportunity to any board members who wish to make comments on this change to the comprehensive plan.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Taylor.
No, thank
Okay.
Fine.
We have a motion on the floor. We have a second, so I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and it's unanimous and approved. Okay, we move on to item number 7. I'd like to have a motion on the floor, please.
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt zoning ordinance 24-03 to rezone 2 acres out of tax parcel 10468-005G from RU4 Rural District 1 dwelling per 4 acres to General Business District pursuant to the application of Clinton Gray.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Taylor, you have a presentation.
Yes, Madam Chair, Supervisors. This is the staff presentation for docket RZ 2403. This is an applicant-initiated request to rezone property from RU4 to GB. The applicant is Clinton Gray. The property's location is 10501 Dove Song Lane. The request is to rezone 2 acres out of APN 104680005G. That parcel is, the parent parcel is approximately 18.5 acres. Current zoning is RU4. The proposed zoning is GB. Property is located within Growth Area C, which is a rural community area. The current plan designation for the parcel in consideration is business, high density residential. GB is a consistent zoning district with that land use designation. The existing use is undeveloped. The proposed use is for a veterinary clinic. Again, the property is located in Palominas at the corner of Highway 92 and Dove Song Lane, approximately 14 miles west of our location. This map shows the location of the parcel as well as the surrounding zoning districts. The property is predominantly surrounded by RU with some GB along the frontage of Highway 92 and some R36 residential zoning further to the north of 92. Some images of the property from across the street. Again, it's at the corner of Highway 92 and Dove Song Lane. Some of the surrounding uses include the Canyon General Mini Mart, the abandoned Miracle Valley Bible College is immediately to the west, a new Dollar General across the street to the north, as well as a mini warehouse. And other non-residential uses include contractor services, auto repair, and a small fire station. The applicants provided a concept plan of the proposed 2-acre zoning site. The east 1 acre will be the location of the veterinary clinic. At this time, the future development of the western 1 acre is undetermined. It could include outdoor pens or barns. It could include boarding services. Staff will note certainly animal husbandry uses do require a special use authorization in GB. So at the time that that second phase is developed to move forward, that would be a conversation that staff would be involved with as well to determine whether or not the base district, if the Board of Supervisors approves the GB, allows that use by right, if it would require additional entitlements by the Planning and Zoning Commission. The applicant mailed letters as required by the zoning regulations on 26 January, and staff mailed notices, posted the property, and published a legal advertisement between 20 and 21 February. And specifically, staff mailed 25 notices to property owners within 600 feet of the rezoning area. Again, sections 2.63080 of the zoning regulations identify 15 factors which we use to evaluate rezoning requests. In this particular case, there are no hazardous materials used for the future use, and the application complies with all the remaining factors. Again, factors in favor would be complies with 14 applicable factors. GB zoning is consistent with the Southern San Pedro Valley Area Plan land use designation and is established in the vicinity, and in fact is immediately abutting on a parcel to the east. The proposed use is generally consistent with the existing development pattern along Highway 92. Factors against approval, none have been identified at this time. And Madam Chair and Supervisors, that concludes staff's presentation of docket RZ 2403. We're available for any questions you have, and the applicant is present.
I have one question. I may have heard this, but it didn't click. The applicant owns 13 acres?
Madam Chair, the parent parcel, which is the 005G, is 18.5 acres. 18. And the applicant wishes to parcel out 2 of those acres for to another owner for the use for developing a veterinary clinic.
Okay, so it isn't developing their own property. It wants to sell these acreages.
Yes, Madam Chair. Correct.
All right, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Is that okay? Then I'll open it up for the public hearing on this issue. If there's anyone who wishes to speak either for or against, if you would come to the microphone, please. Give your name and address.
My name is Clinton Gray. I'm the applicant. I live at 10501 Dovesong Lane, Palominas. This property I've owned for quite a while, and I feel that this would be a very good addition to our community to have a veterinary clinic out there. And sorry for the emotionalness, but I'm quite attached to the area.
All right.
So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Madam Chair? I'm sorry. Ms. Tricia Giardet submitted a form to speak on this item.
You're right. Thank you.
And if I could say, Madam Chair, I think a lot of us would like to have a veterinary clinic in our neighborhood. I just want to say that I think that's very good use of that property.
I was going to say, I hope he finds a veterinarian.
Okay. Veterinarian for it.
I do have one person who is on Teams. Tricia Giardet, you wish to speak on this issue?
Yes, I do. Thank you. This is Tricia Giardet. I'm in Sierra Vista. I agree that a veterinary clinic would be quite a good addition to the area. So that would be wonderful for the residents. I have a couple of comments to make. Mr. Taylor answered some of my questions yesterday. Thank you. One of my concerns is adding curb cuts to State Route 92. And I believe the state has not done a very good job of managing curb cuts on our freeways, highways, and allowed Sierra Vista, for example, to become kind of a mess around Ace Hardware, around the Culvers. There are these very short turnoffs and multiple confusing turnoffs. And I just hope that this isn't a first step towards seeing a similar issue around the Palominas area and the highway. So I don't think there's a lot you can do, perhaps, as supervisors, but I do hope that we don't see a multiplicity of them. And I hope that ADOT will do a good job of allowing enough of a turnoff lane for not just ordinary vehicles, but a vehicle that might be pulling an animal trailer, which would need a longer than normal access lane. So I hope they'll stay on top of that. I'll also urge the applicant to consider rainwater harvesting as part of this construction. There would surely be areas where non-potable water would be adequate, and it would be good to start down the pathway of doing as much rainwater harvesting and storage as possible. This is a small increase in the amount of water that would be used in the area, but I think every bit is worth counting. So rainwater harvesting. Thank you.
I have not any other people who wish to speak before.
Madam.
Yes. Do you wish to speak on the public hearing? You need to come to the microphone and give us your name and address, please.
My name is Joe Celso. I live at 10522 South Dove Song Lane. I'm Mr. Grady's neighbor. I'm so sorry. Known him for a long time. I'm totally in favor of this. I was part of the committee that developed a master plan for the area, and we determined at that time we were working on it that everything from Bible College east to the river is appropriate for rezoning for general business purposes. And this kind of a business is absolutely essential in that area. There are so many people down there that have large animals, and this would make it more convenient for them. Since, oh my gosh, excuse me, I'm just, my brain. Veterinarian on Palominas Road, Dr. Thresher is retiring and closing his business down, so he will not be available for large animals anymore. And there's nobody in the area that does small animals, so this would be a very good thing to have in that particular area. I do agree with Mrs. Girodet. Is that her name? It's just spoke previously?
Yes.
Okay, about the traffic situation there. I know when they put in the Dollar General store, they kept the speed limit at 65 miles per hour. I contacted the county about that. I contacted the state Department of Transportation, and eventually they lowered it to 55. There may be a necessity eventually to lower the speed limit or either further or put in some turn lanes down there. So that would be my only concern about the traffic situation. But other than that, I'm 1,000% in favor of this.
Thank you. You realize on state highways we don't have any authority, but certainly we can help be a conduit if you think there's change that needs to take place. If there's no one else to speak on this issue, then I will close the public hearing portion. We do have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further comments before I call for the vote?
Madam Chair, I think Ms. Girodet's comments about curb cuts are well taken, and I made the same remarks about the St. David convenience store. And I would also like to note that people love their veterinarians, as you probably know.
Any other comments?
No.
All right, and I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and it's unanimous and approved. All right. Mr. Taylor, you're becoming a fixture this morning. I'd like to have a motion on the floor for number 8, please.
Madam Chair, I move we adopt zoning ordinance 24-042 rezone tax parcel 403-54241A from R36 residential District 1 dwelling per 36,000 square feet to RU4 rural district 1 dwelling per 4 acres pursuant to the application of Mohammed Hodai.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Taylor.
Madam Chair and Supervisors, this is the staff presentation for docket RZ 2402. An applicant-initiated rezoning request to downzone property in Sunsites Ranches Unit Number 4 from R36 to RU4. The applicant is Mohammed Hodai. The location again is in Sunsite Ranches. That would be APN 403-54241 Alpha. Current zoning is R36. The proposed zoning district is RU4. Growth area is located in its D, rural district. Plan designation is also rural. Existing use is the property is undeveloped. The proposed use is much like the first docket. The applicant intends to participate in the county's owner-builder opt-out program. Yeah, the property location is in Sunsites Ranches. It's approximately 6 miles to the east of Alfreda. The property is, again, showing the parcel, 7.7 acres, surrounded by R36 parcels, which are generally undeveloped.
Stop right there. You said it's 6 miles east of Alfreda?
Correct. Northeast.
Oh, north. North would work for me, but 6 miles east does not. That's the mountains.
It's right at the foothills. It's literally borders state land.
Okay. Go ahead.
Some images of the property showing the remoteness. The roads are not improved. The applicant did provide a concept plan showing that he intends to build a single-family residence with accessory structure. Being a downzone, the applicant was not required to participate in the public input process. The zoning regulations require because it is a downzone. Staff did mail notices, posted the property, and published a legal ad on 21 February. The request complies with 10 of the 15 applicable factors identified by section 2.63080 of the zoning regulations. To summarize, factors in favor of approval complies with those 10 applicable factors. It is the proposed use of the property and zoning district are compatible with the rural development pattern. Downzone reduces the potential number of allowed residents. No opposition from adjacent property owners. Staff did mail 8 notices to property owners within 300 feet and did not receive any responses. Factors against approval, none identified at this time. And Madam Chair, that concludes staff's presentation. The applicant was unable to attend personally, but should be attending virtually if the board has any questions.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Taylor from the board?
Not at this time, thank you.
You said?
No, I don't.
Okay, then I'll open up the public hearing on ordinance 2404. Is there anyone in the audience or online who wishes to speak in the public hearing portion of this?
Madam Chair, I am the applicant. I don't really have anything to add, but I am available if you all have any questions.
Thank you. I don't see any questions bubbling up here because normally we're in favor of trying to take these small parcels and put them together into larger parcels. So I think the tenor of the board has said that in the past. Any comments, questions?
No.
Okay, I don't hear anything from the audience, so I'm going to close the public hearing. We have a motion and a second on the floor. If there's no further comments from the board, questions, call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and it's unanimous and approved. All right. Next, we have action items. Item number 9. I think we have Kenny and Megan both here to talk about the opioid abatement. Could I have a motion on the floor, please?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve opioid abatement funding grant AG 24-011 from the Office of the Attorney General for the medications for opiate use disorder MOUD program and contraband detection and reduction for the purpose of reentry planning in the amount of $1,046,861.38 for the period of January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Give us an explanation. How'd you get this much money?
Good morning, Madam Chair, Supervisor Judd, and Supervisor Crosby. We're here today to respectfully request your approval for the opioid abatement funding grant awarded by the Attorney General in the amount of $1,046,861.38. This funding is intended to support the successful community reentry of criminal justice involved individuals suffering from opioid use disorder and co-occurring substance use disorder and mental health conditions. Our grant submission project project plan included 3 strategies: augmenting and supporting our current community reentry program, supporting a medication-assisted treatment and medications for opioid use disorder program, and also a contraband detection and reduction program. This grant funding will allow for 4 additional full-time positions to support these programs, purchase body scanners to detect and reduce contraband entering our facility, and purchase equipment to better support these programs. Commander Bradshaw and I are both more than happy to answer any questions that you may have about this.
I have a question about the medication. We've not been able to do this in the past.
We have been able to do this in the past through a MOU with Community Medical Services, CMS, out of Sierra Vista. However, the program is very limited as to what we can provide and what we can continue due to the availability of medications that that CMS provides. So this would be on a much larger scale. We would be able to reach a lot more individuals, and we would be able to support a lot more individuals in their opioid use disorder, substance use disorder.
As they transition?
Yes, both.
Oh, while they're in jail?
Yes, while they're in jail.
And transition.
And with this program, we have a very aggressive goal to reduce recidivism to those that are in the program by 30%, as reported to the AG.
Right. Well, over time, we found out what the barriers are, and one of them is, the lack of medication, the lack of direction, the lack of hand-holding, and we've tried to address all of those. So, good. Any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I think the answer is coming up this Sunday, actually, to opioid abuse. But besides that, do you have any thumbnail estimate of how many opiate user persons might this program address?
So I don't have the stats in front of me. However, the majority of the individuals that we have housed in our jail now are facing some sort of addiction issues, substance use disorder, opioid use disorder. And with us being able to reach individuals whom we've not been able to reach prior to this, with this funding, I believe that we'll be able to increase our program and increase those individuals by exponentially. I would say we would probably be enrolling over 50 individuals a month in something like this.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair, there's one thing I heard about the body scanners. So as you're bringing them in, besides just kind of checking their pockets, there's a scanner that can detect substances that they're carrying on them.
Yes, ma'am. It's much like when you go through security at the airport and you go through a body scanner. It can detect any kind of contraband, so weapons, any foreign substance, anything like that.
Okay.
It's like having a big dog standing there.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that's important, and I guess why it stuck out to me is because I thought you'd probably already have something like that. So this is very good.
Yeah, in the past, we've always wanted them. They've been very cost restrictive. The current ones we're looking at are $158,000 a piece. And we requested 2 through this grant, one for the Sierra Vista facility and one for the Bisbee facility.
And what's the maintenance cost on them? I need to always ask that, because that's usually what hits us up the side of the head. You buy something and then you come to us for maintenance.
So it includes 5 years of maintenance, software, updates, and then training for the staff.
Any other questions or comments?
No.
I don't.
No.
Good.
Okay. Well, we have a motion on the floor. If there's no more questions or comments, then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and it's unanimous and approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
And good luck with this. We're doing everything we can to soften what's happening in our public right now. Ms. Watkins? Could I have a motion on the floor, please?
Madam Chair, I move we approve intergovernmental agreement IGA 23-0009-419-I. Or is that a one? I don't know, but it's either a one or an I. It's an I. Davis Road Rehabilitation, mileposts 5 and 13 between the Arizona Department of Transportation, ADOT, and Cochise County to administer the drainage and roadway construction for Davis Road at mileposts 5 and 13 and authorize the county estimated cost share in the amount of $204,869 effective upon signing by all parties.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Watkins?
Madam Chair, board members, this project has been going on since 2003. This is the last two culverts on Davis Road to make this road an all-weather access, so we don't have to keep closing Davis Road during monsoon season. We applied for a grant for congressional discretionary funds that we awarded around $2.9 million. The total project cost is going to be about $6.5 million, and we do have the funding in our HERF budget, and it is in our budget. And ADOT will administer this project because of the federal funds, so they will advertise and bid and be in charge of all the construction.
So you mentioned this is going to be culverts and not bridges.
Culverts.
Right?
Well, a bridge is anything that's over 20 feet, so it'd be about the same thing that we have at milepost 9. So there was 3 that we were doing on this road, milepost 5, 9, and 13, and in 2018 we completed milepost 9.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Is the milepost 9, is that the area that looks like it's concrete?
Yes.
Okay. Is the structures that you're going to install sufficient for widening of Davis, which I believe is also part of the future plan?
It will be in the same footprint to make it for a 2-lane with 8-foot shoulders, yes.
Okay.
Yes, that has been taken into consideration.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't have anything.
Thank you. Do we know when that money's going to come down?
The federal fund, once we have the plans updated, because they were done so long ago that we have to update our NEPA clearance and just finalize the plans, then we will send it to the feds, but it has already been designated for us.
Okay. Usually designation though, and then delivery of these funds is sometimes a long time between.
This project will probably be constructed this fall. I mean, this started back in September is when we got the funds.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
No.
Okay. I think we have a motion and a second on the floor. So if there's no further comments, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and it's unanimous and approved. The next one is Ms. Kennedy. Let's have a motion while she's coming up to address this.
Okay. Madam Chair, I move that we approve Amendment 6 to contract number YH16-0018-13, revision of rates for state fiscal year 2024 between the Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment Center, Access, and Cochise County.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Kennedy.
Good morning again. I am respectfully requesting your approval for Amendment 6 to the IGA between Access and Cochise County Detention Health Services. That is solely to revise rates for state fiscal year 2024. This agreement was originally put into effect in 2012. It allows for Cochise County Detention Health Services to be charged at a much lower rate when inmates are hospitalized. It also allows for current individuals who are receiving access to be, for their access to be suspended rather than terminated whenever they become incarcerated. And this makes the reentry to the community and continuity of care a much smoother process. And it also increases the access to care for inmates who are reentering the community due to their access benefits being able to be reinstated almost immediately. Since 2012, this IGA has continually saved the county hundreds of thousands of dollars annually.
So let me get this straight in my mind. These people are suspended from access as soon as they are incarcerated.
If the IGA is not in place. If the IGA is not in place, yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a big percentage of them that are on access.
Very large percentage, yes.
Right. Good. Any questions or comments?
No, ma'am.
I don't have anything. Thanks.
Well, I see this as just us moving forward and maintaining the fact that, it took a while to get this in place because for a while they were just dropped altogether. And then you take a vulnerable person who's just gotten out of jail, who doesn't have any services available to them, and expect them to know that they need to go through the process again. And meanwhile, they're sick and they're on no program. And then where do they fall? Either the hospital has to eat that or it becomes a county problem.
Absolutely.
So thank you for them putting it together. If there's no further questions or comments,
none.
Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and it's unanimous and approved. Thank you, Megan. State and federal legislation. Budget hasn't come up yet. You've gotten all the information that comes out from the Legislative Policy Committee. If you have no questions or comments about that, then I will move on. Mr. Karwachka, you have a report?
I do. So going on the same path of the mental health and recovery support that's needed in Cochise County, I wanted to inform the public that at our Douglas Clinic, Hope Incorporated will be present on Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And then in Sierra Vista on Mondays and Wednesdays, Mondays being 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., Wednesdays being 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And that is Hope Incorporated mental health and recovery support. So that is a huge step in trying to bring people down to offer that. And I credit that to Ms. Lang, our health director, for coordinating that effort. So I just wanted to inform the public that is another helpful support system in our county.
Well, I see the sign on the wall in Douglas, so they are in Douglas now.
Is it like this?
No, they can't put that much on a wall. But it is a peer support, and we all know that, and when people have gone through a crisis and are willing to try and help others, it's much more effective than someone with a college degree coming to them and saying, I'm here to help you, and not sure of how to offer that service. So that's a good thing. All right, current events. District 1?
I will pass.
District 2, I will pass. District 3?
I'll go ahead and pass. Nothing major's coming up, so.
No.
The birds went home.
No birds to talk about.
No birds to talk about anymore.
All right.
That comes up in May.
Next meeting will be Friday, March the 29th at 1 p.m. in the Board of Supervisors hearing room, and it is a special meeting. Having said that, this meeting is adjourned.